Friends and neighbors, we are broadcasting now again for Upmarket Magazine on this intuitive public TV. And I am joined again, blessings, abundance. Johanna Otigum is here with us. Hello, Joha. How are you today?
Hi, I'm really glad I get to be here. I'm getting to look out my windows at the beautiful snow that we've gotten here again this week.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good to be here. I'm glad we get to continue talking about these wonderful things.
Today, we are touching on the subject of two words in particular. And those words are deluxe and premium. And those words, what I grew up with those words was a particular vibe. I grew up with a particular idea of what deluxe and premium meant. And as I moved through the portion of lifetime I've had so far, I started to realize that the words didn't mean what I thought they meant. And then I had to come up with a new way of thinking about those words because otherwise language no longer made sense.
Yeah, that's something we do a lot, work with language and definitions and etymology and all of that, and it's wonderful and important.
We're always traveling through it. Words change meanings actually a lot. And these ones are pretty important because deluxe and premium are both words used to convey significant value, significant worth, to convey wealth. So I have some notes. I'm going to read from some of my notes. So what we're usually talking about when we're talking about deluxe and premium, we're talking about higher quality, more luxurious or luxuriant versions of a product or a service, some sort of experience that might be a deluxe experience or a premium experience. Comfort is a major factor. Enhanced features, something you want more, something that you feel more revitalized by when you get access to it, beyond the standard options, beyond the normal, beyond the usual, right? Premium, superior quality, exclusivity, higher price is kind of an interesting facet of this. And I do want to say, we are introducing this conversation in this half-hour broadcast right now, but this is a conversation that is going to continue through Upmarket Magazine content, I think for a long time coming, because we're all having some kind of experience of coming to terms with those marketing terms not having ended up meaning what they were supposed to mean. For instance, we have a lot of supposedly deluxe, supposedly premium products and services and experiences on the market anywhere you look that actually don't provide a superior quality experience, that may seem to at first, that may have vivacious sales language,
Yeah.
but is often missing living relationship, is often missing life vitality. And because of that missing set of components that actually, we as living creatures, we gravitate toward. We want what we feel desire. Our bodies feel activated. We want to lean in to something. But what we want to lean into has a lot to do with our life force energy. It has a lot to do with our relationships with one another. If you look at any kind of marketing language, you can look at what will I get if I get this thing? People will like me. I'll get a hot date. I'll be safe socially, like I'll be accepted.
Mhm.
I'll be embraced by other people. I'll be part of the community. I'll be part of the tribe because people will respect me. We're talking about relationships that people desire when they respond to this kind of marketing language. I want to be well resourced. I want to live in abundance. I want to have a strong connectivity with my needs being met and my family body being strong and what I want in the world flourishing like like a flourishing forest, like a flourishing garden. We're talking about relationships, but often the experience or the product or the service that we're being offered, often at a premium, something that we pay more for. There's a greater cost, and receiving what is supposed to be a premium experience, receiving what is supposed to be a deluxe, a luxury quality of experience, or the goods or the services. Often relationship actually is missing. People can buy the most expensive of things and discover that they are not recognized or cared for by the organization or the people who took their money to give them what they thought was going to be a more energized kind of life experience, or a more attuned kind of relationship, right?
Yeah. It's making me think about some, not necessarily communities or people where you're going to maybe get to work with one-on-one is one of the things that often happens with the premium package. But I'm
Mhm.
thinking about like streaming services, and it's hard for me. Like, it often means it's easier to access your stuff, right? They've got extra things and like no ads, and that's considered premium. And I'm like, that should be basic. So that's kind of a funny thing. But I think often, yeah, we're talking about not just the more time and attention. I think that's often what those packages mean, is like, oh, you're going to get some one-on-one time, you're going to get access to exclusive things that only some people um, can access if you pay the premium or otherwise get into it. But there's a lot of examples of that where there isn't actually any relationship building, or I guess it's kind of like it's still often an offering that is like disseminated to you, and you have a little more in time access, but not necessarily the relationship, right? And that means someone getting to know you, um, and what your needs are. Like, I think about if I am able to pay for a premium or deluxe access to something, I want to be able to be more real than I've ever been, right? Like, there's a level of intimacy that happens. And so that's where, like, when I said last time, like, I mentioned bravery in the context of building relationships.
Mhm.
Yeah.
There are these fundamentally human experiences, that have to do with relationship, that have to do with initiatory experiences, rising to a challenge and finding one's capacities are deepening and expanding in order to meet the challenge. That is so much about relationships also, because the value of us meeting challenges together is so profound. And when that's missing, there's really something major missing. There is a missing strength. There is a missing nourishment. There's a missing regenerative component when we don't know how to meet challenges together. And I want to also mention, in terms of marketing and deluxe, I thought it was very, very interesting that when I went and looked at the etymology of deluxe, what I found was sex. Isn't that interesting?
I was
So,
really curious what you were going to find there. Yeah. Wow.
so etymology online lists, like from the 1300s, sexual intercourse lasciviousness, sinful self-indulgence. So like many of us, you know, we see deluxe, deluxe, deluxe everywhere, but we didn't grow up in the 1300s or the 1400s. And I just think that's so interesting for a couple of reasons. One reason is that the way we see sex used and misused in marketing in many, many different subtle ways. That's a really interesting part of this. Another really interesting part of it is if you spend time learning about honorable, intimate relationships, you start to realize there's a certain way that people ought to treat one another when they're intimately involved with one another. And what you notice is that massively across the board, so many people are not having that respect-oriented experience of intimate relationship. And I think this is really related to the ways that we're surrounded by marketing that for hundreds of years has been there's been this leveraging of sex, and it also draws people into these relationships with companies, with businesses that are, in the end, in many, many cases, the experience of being subtly or overtly abused by someone you have placed intimate trust in. And so many businesses have practices that you know they don't examine that their user base, their consumers, their clients, their customers feel taken advantage of. And I have heard a lot of people say this feels like that awful relationship I was in where I just stayed and I just let that person treat me awfully. And it does, like, it's about intimacy. Like, we can talk about sex or not talk about sex, but it's an intimate experience of realizing I really needed this person or this organization or this business. I needed them to really stand by their word. I really needed their marketing materials to be really truthful, really honorable. And I even thought that they were at first. And then I realized, whoa, that is not what's happening. But then, you know, I need a particular service. I need a particular access to a particular product, access to a particular kind of support in my world. And oh, wow, the source of that is now like really clearly a problem. And like, it's a horrible experience. But where do I go to find an honorable version of that resource that I need, especially when everywhere you look, the marketing languaging is like, what are you going to do? How are you going to tell the difference? How do you identify a truly attuned, honorable relationship, whether we're talking about intimate life partners or whether we're talking about the marketing landscape? That's a big issue for a lot of people right now.
Yeah, and I'm noticing, you know, having used the word bravery about building relationships a couple of times, like here's the other side of it is like, how do we even discern, you know, what's in there, the all this shiny object and, you know, like deluxe to me without the sexuality represents like something that is fancy, is beautiful, right? Is like decorated and so on, right? So yeah, so discerning that, and I know for myself and quite a lot of people that I know, you know, we've made attempts to work with people or enter into things or to invest basically in our own future, our own vocation, our own recovery, for example, and we reach for things and like I'll try to perform and like be the client that's being successful and I'll fail and I'll be so confused. And then I also might feel like locked into staying in it and trying to figure it out. Because I do think discernments are really challenging, right? I mean, that's something that Intuitive Network spends a lot of a lot of energy on, because it's so important to actually, like, we got to be like, the bravery comes from within us because we have needs and we have callings. But then we also have to be able to make discernments and navigate and make choices along the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I want to mention some more of the words in my notes based on what you said. Delicacy, extravagance, magnificence, sumptuous surroundings. So when I think of sumptuous surroundings, I don't think of artificial fabrics and like gold paint on what do you call that? Uh,
Like
that it's wood, but it's like pressed. It's not natural wood,
plywood. Yeah.
but
Press board
press board. Is that it?
or
Um,
plywood.
so many people are buying really, really expensive houses and then finding out that toxic mold is eating all of the really cheap materials that have been like painted, like blitzed up to look expensive, and they're not made of good materials at all. That is unfortunately really widespread. When I think of sumptuous surroundings, I think of a thriving garden. I think of a well-tended food forest.
Hmm.
That's what I think of when I think of luxury. When I think about, so let's see, premium. So premium, to feel rewarded by engaging with something that is premium, to feel like an achievement has occurred. I have brought resources to bear that have matched the cost of this extra special thing, and now I'm having an extra special experience. When I think about that, I think about materials that are real, natural wood, like high quality natural wood materials. um, I think of stone. I think of, what from the natural world is the most resilient that people make things out of. What materials, what fabrics are most resilient? What, they vibrate at a frequency that the body really feels supported by, which is really different than you have these materials made of plastic. You have materials made of toxic stuff that makes people sick. And people don't necessarily know how to identify materials, but the difference between like a bench that we have out in the garden made of natural high quality wood versus a bench made out of this resin. I don't know if you've seen these.
Yeah.
It's essentially plastic, and it does not, you can feel it when you sit on it. It is not the same experience. It is not the experience of someone lovingly handcrafting a resource for the family, for the community, that is here to be in the life of the community. I am in relationship with this table. I am in relationship with the bench I sit on in the garden. I am in relationship with the garden tools. Do I want garden tools that are made of materials that are harmful to the planet? Do I want gardening materials that are made of really natural? You know what I mean? There are a lot of different things that we can talk about in this regard, but I mean, so many people are realizing, oh man, I bought all this stuff made of plastic in my house because it was being marketed as like, this is this great thing. And it's like, it's fallen apart and it's decaying. And we end up with, and I can say mold over and over again because we talk to a lot of people who have dealt with
Yeah.
toxic mold. And so it's like, there's this dissonance where, wait a second, it wasn't even true. Premium, deluxe, it wasn't even true. So where is the true experience of deluxe or premium. And what we say in the intuitive upmarket, when we're working through these kinds of materials, we're looking at the abundance of the natural world. We're looking at the quality of our relationships with one another, our ability to share emotional resonance and collaborations where we can work together to accomplish something that no one of us could ever have accomplished on our own. The quality of our songs, the quality of our stories, the quality of preparing meals together, gathering food together from the natural world that we are respecting and stewarding, and that natural world is then feeding us.
Mm-hmm.
That's a deluxe experience. And a lot of people know that, but a lot of people are confused about it. And so that's one of our major topics with Upmarket.
Oh, I have a bunch of responses. Okay.
Yeah.
So I love this so much. So when we're, you used a lot of physical examples, which I really liked. My body really enjoyed that. I'm like, oh, yes, right? Like being in the space. So, when we're talking about relationships, that natural world might include like the lineages or the people that we learned from, that our teachers learned from, or whoever's offering the service, connectivity. But one of I think there's three qualities for me as I'm sitting here and we're thinking about this. I'm like, what is premium for me? What feels deluxe? So I think there's kind of three qualities that are really primary for me. One is being free from toxicity or pressure or things like that. It's like actually having space and having peace, which relates to the second one, which is about time. So like time is like one of the most premium deluxe things that we can give each other in the world as it is right now, to actually slow down, to take space, to deal with challenges instead of have to rush past them, instead of having to like do boundary enforcements or, sort things out. But there's also, so there's that immediate like sense of time and space. Like I'm imagining being in your backyard and just luxuriating in being there and not rushing through whatever we're doing, whether it's gathering food or working on a marketing campaign or whatever it is. But then there's the long time of like, am I just going to like pay someone for this premium thing for 6 weeks and then I'm never going to talk to them again? And there's a relative emptiness to something where, I mean, it's okay in the transactional sense. There's room for that too, of like, I went and I got this thing and it's done and I don't need any more from that container. But I think there's so much lack. It's just sort of a really glaring thing for me, how much we like come into contact and then rush away from each other. And there's just so much of that happening.
And
So,
anything that we want to believe is deluxe or premium. There are a lot of other words that we could bring in here.
yeah.
And I have tended to focus on those because those were some of the words that we talked about when Upmarket was coming into being. But any of those kinds of words that signal supreme value, is there true living relationship as part of that proposition?
Yeah.
And if there isn't, what's the reason that there isn't? And I think there are some good reasons. There are people, there are businesses who can produce something in a certain way, and that's the way they can do it. And they're not saying that it's something that it's not. And it's good for them to produce it in that way. And then there are a lot of things out there where the feeling state of living relationship is being facsimiled in order to sell whatever it is.
Yeah.
And that unfortunately does a huge amount of damage to people's real emotional bodies, to people's concepts of what relationships are. Because when you're surrounded by it, especially if you're under stress, especially if you're having a hard time, there are a lot of people out there having a hard time, you start to you refer to that template because it's what you're encountering most often. And so your sense of what a relationship is really gets to be affected by the kinds of relationships that are just like normalized around you. And it's not only the way that people are interacting around you, it's also all of the egregores that are interacting with you. This business with this logo, and this organization with this particular recognizable messaging, and they do the same thing again, and they do the same thing again, and they do the same thing again, and you absorb those patterns the way that if we lived in the natural forest, if we lived close to the earth and we were not surrounded by all of the marketing and advertising, our bodies would be patterned to the attunement of the sounds of the birds, the sounds of the creatures moving in the forest, the sound of the waves, the sound of the wind.
Also,
Those,
the smells, the how the
yes,
days progress and the light changes.
yes. And when we're surrounded by businesses that have questionable understandings of the influence that they're exercising, and some of them know exactly what they're doing, by the way, and many of them don't,
Yep.
people's bodies are affected by the patterns that they're absorbing on repeat all the time. Because of course, the people who the businesses, the entities who are doing the best are often the ones who are repeating most frequently and most loudly.
Yeah, and that's a problem, right? It's like, I mean, especially some of the big behemoths and like their marketing becomes something different because they're already embedded in our lives and they're already normal. And it's actually really hard to disengage and do something else if they're taking up this like crucial space in the social economic body.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about this, I'm reflecting on my own experiences, and I just keep kind of having this sort of memory of the visceral experience of like, I'm trying to do this thing I'm getting all these messages from outside me of things I'm interacting with, and I keep trying to make them work. I keep trying to show up in those ways, and it doesn't work. And
Yeah.
it's been all sorts of troubles and distress and confusion for me over the years as somebody who's like, I'm trying to figure this out and relate and gain tools. And I have also done that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So all of us all the time, I think, whether we know it or not, we're working through those patterns. And what we want to prioritize in our conversations for Upmarket is always, how are we bringing in what is truly deluxe? What is the honorable intimate relationship, for instance? What is truly a premium experience, a profoundly rewarding experience? We are working with new and different definitions of these words as we move forward, because we see them messed with everywhere we look. This has been an amazing 28, 29 minutes. I love having these conversations with you. I'm so excited that we're doing this.
Me too. Me too. And I think there's, we didn't necessarily like, we could sort of back up and like do a little more disambiguation. Like there's a reason why we're talking about deluxe and premium, because they're so confusing and they've been so misused. And another thing to talk about is like, this doesn't mean you can't, like, if you're trying to be the most authentic person making a deluxe offer, that doesn't mean that you're supposed to do the opposite problem of like, I'm going to be so available 24/7 for people. It's okay if there's a boundaried, transactional, simple kind of exchange too. There's got to be room for all of it, right? So we're kind of like constellating and seeing what is possible and what could be and what we think should be happening. But there's lots more to explore about how to make it work and how to design things and how to navigate.
The more we continue to dialogue about it, the more we continue to work through it together, the more each one of us, and in our collaborative groups, we can discover what that is for us, what allows us to really produce what is the best quality of offering that we can bring to others, not to allow ourselves to be hurt or pushed over a stress edge, like, oh, I'd better do this. We can't survive that way. And at the same time, what are others perceiving about our messaging? What kind of relationship are we describing to them that they're responding to? And are we really in that relationship with them? Are we honoring the connection point between us, where we're really attuning with the other, and we're really honoring ourselves, and we're watching for their attunement with us as we're watching for our attunement with them? And it's all about relationships. So I think that's a wonderful place to wrap this up this evening. And I'm really, really looking forward to doing this again.
Yeah. Just like last time, I'm like, I'm like excited about the next conversation. I was doing this last time. So yeah, I'm excited to explore it more and find the language. And I think one of the keys is like coming from a place of not assuming or trying to perform that we know it all already. And that can be really scary, right? Like we're being reassured all the time, like, oh, we got this, we got you. And it's actually a really brave, intelligent thing to do, to be honest about what we don't know and take the time to find out and explore together. And thank you so much for always emphasizing collaboration and figuring it out together. I just, it unfolds more and more in good ways for me to be around that all the time.
Let's keep doing it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much to our viewing and listening audiences. We are so pleased to be bringing Upmarket Magazine to this intuitive public TV. Please keep tuning in. We will be back soon. I am Megan Elizabeth Morris. This is Johanna Otigam signing off. See you soon.
Bye, everybody.